may I have your attention? Please welcome TechCrunch Managing Editor, Matt Burns.
Wow, look at all these people out here. Oh my. Yes, this is great. This has been a fantastic week. I hope you guys have had a thrilling time. I know I have. I've been attending Disrupt since 2008, and this is the first time I got to host Startup Battlefield. And you guys have been a great audience. I hope I've been a decent host, so thank you very much. I wanted to start with that. Next, I want to recap what happened. Over the last 2 days, you saw 20 companies from the Battlefield 20%. They had 6 minutes to pitch, 6 minutes of question and answers, you know all that. Today, they have 6 minutes to pitch, 9 minutes of question and answers, and the whole new panel of judges. These companies are competing for $100,000 and the Disrupt Cup. The judges are going to look at their potential for impact, and that can be either financially or socially. So when you're sitting there thinking, why did that company win, this one didn't? That's what the judges are looking at. So I'd like you to look at the companies through that too. So with that said, I think we should just get started. We're gonna bring out all the judges here. First up, give a big round of applause. Come up to some energy. First, we have Mar Hershenson. Mar is a co-founder and managing partner of Pear VC, a seed-stage investment firm in Palo Alto, backing companies like Guardian's Health, Gusto, and Branch. Prior to Pear, Mar co-founded 3 companies and held executive positions in product and engineering at Magma Design Automation. Next, we have Jim Lanzone. Jim is the CEO of Yahoo and oversees a global media and tech company that reaches 900 million people around the world and is the 3rd largest property on the internet. And he's the CEO of TechCrunch too, and my boss's boss. He is a former CEO of Tinder, and prior to Tinder, Jim spent a decade as president and CEO of CBS Interactive. He joined CBS in 2011 when CBS Corporation purchased Clicker Media, and Clicker Media actually pitched here on this stage in 2009, but it didn't win though, did it? It did not. Next, we have Aileen Lee. Aileen Lee is a founding partner at Cowboy Ventures, a team that backs seed-stage technology companies reimagining work and life through technology. Cowboy Ventures works with a wide range of startups, from modern enterprise-oriented companies like Guild Education and Lightstep, to new consumer digital native brands like Dollar Shave Club and Tally. Next, we have my boss, Matthew Panzerino. He joined TechCrunch in 2013, became editor-in-chief in 2014, and that's the position he's held since. Next is David Tisch. David Tisch is the managing partner of Box Group, a New York City-based seed-stage venture capital firm that has invested in over 400 seed-stage startups. He is the co-founder of TechStars New York City and serves on the board of Friends of Hudson River Valley Park. Lastly, we have Rich Wong. Rich joined Excel as a partner in 2006. Rich led Excel's investment and currently serves on the boards of Atlassian, UiPath, Checker, and many more. I'm not going to read the entire list here because there's a lot. Rich also served on the National Venture Capital Association Board of Directors. Give him one more round of applause. Lastly, I want to announce the 5 companies that are selected as finalists. Presenting first will be Advanced Ionix, followed by Appmap, Entropic Materials, Minerva Lithium, and lastly, Swap Robotics. They're ready over there, so let's get going. Advanced Ionix. From Milwaukee, Wisconsin, we have Advanced Ionix. Presenting for Advanced Ionix is Chad Mason, founder and CEO. Big round of applause.
All right, so I was told you folks did not talk about hydrogen over happy hour quite as much last night as you were supposed to, so they brought me back so we can really kind of re-emphasize it a bit here. So, just a few more examples, from yesterday about places where hydrogen is used in your daily life, or things like your glassware, silverware, the oils in your cosmetics, and of course the food and beverage I mentioned. So 90+% of hydrogen today is used in just 2 things, and that's ammonia and petrochemicals. And so I like the ammonia example the most because I grew up on a family farm in North Dakota, And hydrogen is used to make ammonia, which is a fertilizer that's put down to help crops grow, like barley that goes in your beer. And I used to drive equipment such as this as a kid, putting down this anhydrous ammonia. So it mattered a lot to me even then. And one of the things to know is these heavy industries like ammonia and petrochemicals, steel, cement, we often don't think about them a lot in the grand scheme of decarbonization, but it's 30+% of total emissions. So we have to decarbonize these industries and, of course, the hydrogen that underpins many of them. I was hoping I wouldn't have to show this again, but one more time, and maybe the last time in my life. Here's me as an irritable teenager getting a picture taken by my mom. So all those kids out there, do let your mom take a picture of you when you're working on cool stuff. One thing I realized back then was that clean hydrogen can be made using a process called electrolysis. And so I started learning how to build electrolyzers from tube and shell back then and trying to make stuff run on them. And one thing I really learned that is important for electrolysis, and it's still true today, is that electricity use limits electrolyzers. And even if your electrolyzer was free, electricity cost and the amount of it that you use just dominates so much. Basically that's why Advanced Ionix was founded, is to set the new standard for industrial electrolysis. And we do that with breakthrough electrolyzers, reducing electricity requirements down to 35 kilowatt hours to make 1 kilogram of hydrogen. And we do this with what we call symbiont cell technology, and it does what other electrolyzers can only dream of doing, eliminating the delicate membrane or brittle ceramics that are seen in every other technology. And what's amazing about this platform architecture is there's no expensive, rare materials that are used everywhere else, no toxic fluoropolymers or difficult to recycle chemicals. And then we do both the material side and the systems under one roof with our amazing team. So let's go to that team right now in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And we have Owen and James here who are going to handle the camera. So these are some of our secret sauce, electrode assemblies and bipolar plates. So in the lower left, you basically see what we started with, a button cell that proved out our technology and the fact that it works really well. And then this year we've scaled that up 20x and are validating that right now internally. And then we've actually already scaled that up another 8x. And we're going to start validation on that early next year on the bipolar plates in the upper left there. And then let's pan over to the left, Owen, and up. Okay, so all of these components go together and get put inside of a cell, which gets put into a stack. And this goes inside of this insulated box here, and that's where the magic happens. Steam is converted into hydrogen and oxygen at the highest efficiencies. And then down on the bottom is the rest of the cool balance of plant that just supports and keeps everything running nice and happy. So thanks a lot, Owen and James, and let's go back to presentation. All right. These systems are being built to have this synergy with industry. And so for the first time, we're actually making electrolyzers that run at exactly the same temperatures as all of these heavy industrial processes I talked about. And so it's really quite simple. Utilizing that heat allows you to significantly lower the amount of electricity you use. So there's that perfect synergy. And so we have really amazing customer traction. Of course, it's always a chicken and egg type thing with startups, hardware startups to prove it out, getting early partners. And we do have some really wonderful partners we're working with to demonstrate it. Chemicals and refinery with a 1 kilogram per day demo, and then moving up to an energy services demo, and then on to my favorite, an ammonia demonstration. And we have even more in the pipeline. Folks are already asking us for systems in the latter half of the decade. So those demonstrations will happen in 23 and 24, early commercialization in 25, and then the larger scale systems will be deployed starting in about 26 and 27 for that massive impact. And so we want to and expect to have over $2 billion in cumulative sales booked by the year 2030. And more importantly, by the year 2050, abating over 10 gigatons of carbon emissions with just our technology alone having this big impact on the industry. And so that future will then finally be realized, where we've replaced all that dirty fossil-based hydrogen production with clean, electrolyzers by our company for heavy industry. And that dream I had as a kid where we could make clean hydrogen for clean ammonia so people on farms such as my family's could grow clean, sustainable crops for everybody. And so come build this future with us. We have just an amazing team of crazy smart people that have great experience in heavy industry and service experience also. So just come join us and be part of our mission to help decarbonize heavy industry. So thank you very much.
Chad, good to see you again. Mar, let's start with you.
Awesome. Good job, Chad.
Thanks.
I mean, it looks like hydrogen is coming up, so this is the right time for a product like this.
Yeah.
I'm curious how far we are from actually having this green hydrogen at a price that is competitive. Maybe you can tell us about it and what's the, what do you need to prove to get to that?
Yeah, so as you probably remember from the pie chart, OpEx, electricity price dominates. And so there's one thing under our control in our industry, and that's use less electricity. The other thing is really we're riding on the coattails of the amazing work that the solar, wind, and other clean energy industries have done. And they've been the ones who've been deploying and driving down the price of clean electricity for all of us. And so everything that plugs in and uses that electricity, just like electrolyzers, needs that cheap electricity from them. And so it's important we use as little of it as possible. So.
How far are we, though? Like, you have to, the green energy has to get cheap enough, and then you guys have, what's...
It's a big job. I mean, our entire industry has to scale up. There's been, what I've read recently is there's some forecasts that we have 10 times less electrolyzer production capacity worldwide than we're going to need to scale up this industry. And really that's mirrored across many clean energy technologies, not just ourselves in the hydrogen industry. So we really need to get to deploying capital into companies like ourselves, but also a lot of other great companies to scale up this tech and start to have an impact. And we don't have any time.
Chad, to follow up on Mar's question, so maybe can you just talk about the current price per kilogram of kind of dirty hydrogen?
Yeah.
And then maybe when you have your first plant, how much money do you think you'll need in terms of CapEx to build the first plant? And what's your estimate about maybe if it is solar powered in a very low electricity location, how much do you think it'll cost, the price per kilogram will be?
Yeah. Once we're scaled up a plant, our costs will probably be, and it varies depending on the size, between $3 to $10 million. And that's our cost of goods sold, basically. Where hydrogen's at today, the situation in Russia has really, in Ukraine has really put a lot of flux into the market right now. And so it really varies wildly. And the prices that are often reported aren't always the same as what's on the books for a company. So even prior decade in the Gulf Coast, you could make hydrogen for 30 cents a kilogram, dirty hydrogen. But it costs a lot of money then if you sell it on the merchant market, and especially it's really bad if you have to compress it, store it, transport it, do all of those things. And so to get to your point is that it's very geographically dependent. How much renewable energy do you have in a region? And then, how much other clean electricity do you have in that region? So places like Chile, Australia have very high solar potential, and other places are less good. So,
what about on a per customer basis? How are you going to get this into the existing? And by the way, congratulations on how far you've come.
Thanks.
From your raging party high school days.
Yeah,
it's a miracle you've made it.
Yeah, I know. I know.
How do you get it out there to the existing infrastructure from what you have?
Yeah. So it really depends also where you're at and the type of customer. So, for example, European companies, even oil and gas, are starting to be very progressive, and they have to start to gradually decarbonize their operations. So we actually provide a real easy pathway for them where you can plug this system into a site and append it on to their existing hydrogen production. And they can immediately start to green their hydrogen slowly and build up. And eventually that old steam methane reformer making dirty hydrogen can be fully replaced. Mm-hmm. Then for other folks, you're starting to see a lot of announcements in, like Chile, India, Middle East, North Africa, Australia, where they're doing brand new build. Ammonia plants, methanol plants, clean steel plants like in Sweden. And so there's really good opportunities for us on both sides, both the retrofitting old and also helping new folks and new project developers deploy new greenfield builds.
Chad, just to understand, is the manufacturer where you're siting the equipment naturally the consumer of it, or do you have to ever ship it off site Or is it, that's the place the hydrogen's?
Yeah, usually it's the large producer of the chemical or the product that they buy the electrolyzer, and then they source their clean electricity however they want. And most of these companies are very large. They have ways to source it themselves.
Go ahead, sorry.
Go, please.
Maybe just a very quick follow-up. To get to your first 10 to 20 million of revenues, I mean, awesome to see the 2 billion goal. How much capital do you think you're going to need to raise to, to sort of put the equipment in place to get to that first several, ideally 10 million of revenue, just to use that?
Roughly, it'll be about 70, 80 million dollars, but I'm giving you very rough ballpark numbers. So.
Great job, and sort of hope it works, right? At the scale that you do. Taking a big step back, we just talk about hydrogen adoption and how your company either needs to educate the market and sort of what will cause industrial users to adopt hydrogen versus all the alternatives that they have. And is that just a price equation game? Is that a distribution? Just sort of where does your company need to fit in the education and distribution of hydrogen versus alternatives?
Yeah, I mean, it's important that you quickly transition as fast as possible. So, to your point, is government policy can really stimulate that. And I was talking about it yesterday about on the production side, the IRA bill has really stimulated the production side, but not on the demand side in the US. Now, Europe is still doing a better job on the demand side, where they're kind of forcing heavy industries to move to clean hydrogen as fast as possible. And kind of furthermore, for the industries I talked about, there is no alternative. They use hydrogen today because it's a critical feedstock for their process. So we need to decarbonize it as quickly as possible.
Are you dependent upon the government to educate, or are you?
It helps. Everybody everybody has a role to play. I mean, even folks in the crowd who are just fans of clean tech, everybody has a role to play to push. And it's important we really talk about the things that have to happen with decarbonizing heavy industry.
Just pulling on this a little more. Your company, how are you going to educate the market? Because that's expensive to teach people things.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me here. That really helps a lot. It's a really amazing platform to have TechCrunch really embracing hardware and climate tech companies such as myself here. So we're just going to keep doing as many events like this and make sure folks know about us, and also prove out what we're doing, and talk to government too.
So let me ask a future question, assuming that you do reach scale. What's the maintenance and follow-up look like on all these machines? Is that a job you see your company is doing, and do you view that as a revenue stream as well?
Yeah, there's a couple ways we can do this, and actually customers have told us they want both methods. I mean, one is where you sell it, and then because they might need to rate base it if they're a utility. And then there is some maintenance agreement afterwards. It wouldn't be significant. It'd be less than 5% of the total cost of the hydrogen. And that's pretty standard across the entire industry. We are going to look at opportunities for leasing arrangements also, but later on when we have some financial partners who can help facilitate that.
Any last questions? Give them one more round of applause.
All right.
That's okay.
Okay, next company. From Boston, Massachusetts, we have Appmap. Presenting for Appmap is Elizabeth Lawler, co-founder and CEO. Give them a round of applause.
Developers are the engine of growth and innovation, building the products we all rely on. But developers spend half their week in toil. Toil is the tedious work in software creation that arises from complexity. Toil robs 25 million developers of the joy of coding. Over 80 million developer hours are being wasted just today in toil. This costs businesses over $85 billion per year in wasted effort. Developers report that toil makes them unhappy, and unhappy developers quit at one of the highest rates of any industry, costing businesses heavily. Companies spend billions on observability, production monitoring, and security testing to find problems in code. Developers toil in mountains of data, looking for information to fix performance issues, remediate security flaws, and rework broken code. Developers are lost in a maze of tools they don't control, away from the coding they love to do. Developers, if you are lost in toil, you need a map. We built app maps so software developers can see the behavior of their software as they write code. Appmap delivers personal observability, performance, and security analysis to developers when they work to reduce toil. And Appmap is in the tool developers love the most, their code editor. Go to demo. This is an app map. App maps are accurate, up-to-date runtime information about the behavior of software as it is at any moment for any environment. The latest version of code in production, in a pull request, and even in the uncommitted changes developers are working on. Appmap traces software execution wherever it goes, even into the data stores and across service boundaries. For the first time ever, developers can see the behavior of their software as they write code. Appmap is real code execution, not a static code analysis. Appmap streams code behavior data right to the code editor. This is a list of app maps, one for each request made to my app. Appmap automatically analyzes this information to find issues while developers work, and it alerts them if it finds a problem. In this application, it's found two issues, a performance issue and a security flaw. First, the performance issue. A query is repeated many times in a loop. This will cause a slowdown in production. Over half of today's performance issues are code-related like this, and no other tool can find them in the code editor. The second is a security issue. The user is authorized before they are authenticated. Broken access control is the #1 security issue in the OS top 10, and no other tool can find it. These are just two examples of the kinds of analyses that Appmap can provide while developers work. There are dozens more. Back to slides. We built Appmap from the ground up to meet the needs of developers. We started with data, purpose-built for personal observability. Appmap integrates deeply with popular languages and frameworks, and Appmap is open source to integrate with new languages and new communities. Companies adopting personal observability have faster time to code onboarding and reduce mean time to repair flaws from weeks down to minutes. Appmaps are shareable for collaboration, and Appmap reports on fixes so organizations can track software improvement. Tens of thousands of developers have adopted Appmap for personal observability in their code editor, from Fortune 50 companies to the Global 1000, startups and coding schools. Appmap has 5-star ratings in the VS Code and JetBrains marketplaces. Postman partnered with Appmap for their community of 6 million developers. Appmap generates open API data in the code editor and syncs it automatically with Postman collections. This is just one example of how runtime data in the code editor can accelerate adoption of developer tools from inside the code editor. Appmap is the only tool to shift dynamic security analysis and performance analysis all the way left into the code editor. Delivering the developer observability experience is a massive market opportunity to disrupt incumbents in the dynamic application security testing space and the application performance monitoring space. But we believe there's a big opportunity ahead to facilitate the adoption of the $40 billion of developer tools that are from inside the code editor with runtime insights. Developers. Appmap is free for individuals, students, and open source projects from the VS Code and JetBrains marketplaces. Join us. Appmap helps development teams reduce toil and ship more performant, secure, and reliable code faster. And for developer-focused organizations, let Appmap help you deliver more value to your users. Partner with Appmap. Thank you.
I have to start with David. David was nodding along the entire time.
I just wanted to look like I understood everything.
Me too. I do.
Congratulations and great job. I guess, you're changing behavior. Developers have grown up with static analysis. You're moving towards dynamic analysis. We talk, and it's sort of a repeat of the last question, but around education of your end user. How much does your company need to teach a new behavior to cause the adoption of that? And obviously the value of your product should sort of speak for itself, but developers historically have been slower to change behavior than at times.
Well, that's a very interesting question because we actually approached developing the product from the maps first. So offering developers a window into how software behaves actually allowed us to surface the issue of dynamic application security testing and the application for performance analysis. So what's very interesting is when you offer developers the opportunity to see or get insights or align more easily in their code editor, you don't actually have to, you can kind of drag them along to the commercial opportunity.
Rich?
Yeah, could I just ask, in order to succeed, are you complementary to the existing IDEs and sort of CI/CD tools out there, or do you ultimately aspire to replace, the sort of incumbent or older tools?
Yes, I think Appmap is actually going to be a great partner for a lot of existing tools. For example, developers who use Appmap also use Datadog and Splunk. And that allows us to bring a different kind of contextual information to some of the issues that they see in those types of other tools.
Do you think, just as a follow-up, similar, congrats on the Postman partnership. That's a smart way to distribute. Do you think you'll ultimately continue to distribute through other forms of BD partnerships like that, or is it better to sort of go direct around and have direct contact, perhaps, with the user?
When we look at the market opportunity, I think there's an opportunity for Appmap to compete directly in the software quality analysis market, similar to tools like Sneak or SonarQube. But I think the big market opportunity is what you've highlighted just there, which is that there are 10,000 companies that have APIs and SDKs and other tools that are consumed by developers. That last mile of developer experience is inside the code editor, and being able to support that customer success for them by providing runtime insights and IDE integration I think that's the big market opportunity.
Thank you.
Follow-up question, and by the way, congratulations, and also we're big fans of this kind of developer-led growth model, and so it's very smart. But most of these companies who are developer adopted first have to figure out monetization, right, to build a scale business. So how do you think about the evolution to getting paid?
Indeed.
What kind of features will cause people to pay you, and whose budget will it come out of?
I think that's a great question. So as you know, developer-led growth, you really want to figure out how you can become the de facto standard, the lingua franca of the type of value you want to deliver to developers. So we did go with an open source freemium model to begin with. But as we were working with our developer community of 25,000 developers, we were able to surface what some of the higher order issues were. So for example, architects were doing hand reviews of maps to find N+1 queries and things like this. And those things they're very interested in paying for those types of services. So analytic services, reporting, sharing. One of the things that leadership reports doing is taking these app maps in order to go get more resources to describe the technical debt and software flaws that are resonant in there.
And does it need to rise up to the boss of the developers? Because that's the person who has the budget, right?
Indeed.
Individual developers may not have budget. And in that case, does it come from the DevOps budget, or did it come from
BPEs, DevOps, managers, managers of large development teams.
Okay.
Great. We'll go to Mara and then Jim.
Good job, Elizabeth. I have a question regarding the 25,000 developers that are using it. I don't know if you can give us some numbers, maybe even what type of developers are using it, what adoption, do they try it and then they keep it? Do they bring it into their companies? What sort of, maybe a color on the 25,000?
Yes, so the 25,000 developers who've installed come from reports from the VS Code and JetBrains marketplaces. So that's net of churn. So that's the number of installed users today. We've had over 500,000 installations of our libraries. Those are the pieces of code that you insert into your code so you can generate this type of runtime data. So you can see that developers are investing in spending more time integrating it to larger parts of their code base. Yes, definitely teams. We work with teams of developers as well who've reported that they use it across their entire team.
Okay.
And then in terms of, I think you might have mentioned about utilization.
But it's mostly personal. I think you mentioned in the presentation that it was for personal observability.
Yes, I mean, it is for personal observability, and that's where we started.
Yeah.
But now we have a SaaS offering that
Okay.
offers this sharing feature, which allows people to embed app maps in pull requests and Jira tickets,
Got it.
et cetera. And then the reporting, which is really much more of a managerial interest.
Are people already using reporting? or-
Yes, they are.
Okay.
We have 30 design partners who have worked with us to develop this solution.
It might be worth mentioning that it was here 2 days ago when we announced the availability of the runtime analysis feature.
Yeah.
So that's brand new, and that's really taking a step more down the commercialization
Yeah,
path. Before that, it's really been for individuals, and we see people from all walks, from Google and Meta to coding schools, like the whole
Okay.
spectrum.
What about privacy? So you're getting a lot of data. So what are you guys doing on the back end security-wise?
So actually, that's part of the real deep innovation here, which is that the data can be locally generated and locally stored. So, for example, we had 3,000 new users sign up and start adopting Appmap since we were on the TechCrunch stage 2 days ago. So we didn't have to worry about scaling the back end because all of that data is local.
Matthew? As you're writing? I'm a very good waiter, too.
Yeah, but I guess just a little follow-on to David's thing. I mean, developers are creatures of habit. I think that it is in a corporate environment, to go along with the security and privacy scenario, you may convince an individual developer, I'm going to try this cool tool. This is awesome, right? But BYOD is not necessarily welcome in a coding environment. And so, like, what do you view? What's your tool that you're utilizing to take that from this developer thinks it's awesome to convincing that their boss that they need to convince their security team to? I mean, I'm speaking. The paranoids are incredibly paranoid at Yahoo. They're very intense.
Yes.
You know, they take their time, and that's a good thing, right, for corporate security. So how do you make it through that path to the sales department?
So from an adoption perspective, I think that's a great question. Going through the VS Code and JetBrains marketplaces actually allows us to get access because those marketplaces are part of the VS Code and JetBrains installations that are local inside of these corporations. So for example, if Meta is using VS Code extensions in the marketplace, a developer there can actually adopt it, and it will already have been pre-vetted through their security team. And I think it's a really kind of clever way for us to avoid a lot of those early conversations that would have otherwise stifled us. From an adoption perspective and education perspective, as I mentioned, these libraries are embedded in the code base. So any new developer who comes who wants to try it or look at it, it's already running. You know, it's already in there. They just have to actually add the extension, and all of a sudden, all of this will just pop up. And it tends to spread that way. Someone will have a pull request or a ticket or discussing a project, and they'll bring up an app map. Oh, where did you get that? But I agree with you. The data residency issue was severe, and in fact, it caused a change in our strategy early on to go with a code editor extension rather than trying to host data ourselves.
And all the code that might touch the customer system, whether it's CI or the code editor, is licensed under open source. So that really helps because they do all, scan and check what they bring in, and that's not 100% of the solution, but it certainly helps.
Thank you.
Could I just ask what the early team's personal backgrounds were, and how did you decide to focus on this problem?
So we're a repeat team of founders who build developer tools. The last project we built was in the cybersecurity space. It was privileged account security for open source, for DevOps tools. We competed with HashiCorp Vault. And prior to that, my background is as a statistical computing person. I have a doctorate in data science and taught statistical computing for 10 years.
Congratulations on the
Awesome.
progress.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Give them a round of applause. Next, from Oakland, California, we have Entropic Materials. Presenting for Entropic Materials is Aaron Hall, founder and CEO. Welcome to the stage.
$7.3 billion tons of plastic have been produced since the 1950s, and 86% of that has become waste. 6.3 billion tons of plastic polluting our land, oceans, air. We're even seeing microplastics in babies in the womb. This is insanity. And why are we making so much of this stuff? Because the properties of plastics are absolutely incredible, and they are now a central part of our modern world. They're an enabling technology for just about every product category that every one of us cares about. And it's a $600 billion industry. Plastics are not going away anytime soon unless we have something to do with it. At Entropic Materials, we're commercializing a breakthrough enzyme stabilization technology that lets us embed the tools necessary to break down plastics directly inside of them. Plastics are made of polymers, and polymers are found all over nature, whether it be cellulose in vegetables, chitin in crab shells, or gluten in mac and cheese. I used to be a chef, so I think in food analogies. And we don't worry about these polymers polluting our planet and causing problems. Why? Because nature has evolved another class of polymers called enzymes that can break down polymers. They act like scissors, cutting up the individual chains so that the small molecules that are left behind can be readily broken down in the soil by microbes and returned back to the planet. And there are enzymes that can break down plastics. So great, let's just use them, right? Well, unfortunately, no, because we haven't built our system for that. We've been focused on recycling. And while recycling is great when it works, the reality is that infrastructure is incredibly fragmented, even where it does exist. There's a lot of steps required, it's laborious, and the margins are not that attractive, which severely limits the adoption. So we started looking at compostable plastics, which are great, but again, that infrastructure isn't all that available, and even when the materials get in there, they're slow to break down. And using enzymes directly has not been available because although they're incredible at doing their work, they're fragile once you take them out of cells, and so they tend to fall apart. But we have a solution for that. At Entropic Materials, our enzyme stabilization technology lets us embed the enzymes directly within the plastic, protecting them from the processing environment so we can turn them on at the end of life and degrade the materials from the inside out. This accelerates the degradation rate from months to years down to days or weeks. Now, I couldn't bring a whole manufacturing and composting infrastructure up here on the stage, and the plastics are not going to break down in 6 minutes, which is actually probably a good thing. So you'll have to trust me that plastics like these, with our technology inside, break down rapidly and completely at the end of life. I'm going to show you some pictures from some of our peer-reviewed publications in journals like Science and Nature, where we showed this technology. Here I'm showing a film just like the one I showed you. In just a few days in compost, you see a dramatic difference. It goes from clear to white, and those little white flakes are so brittle you can pick them up and they just turn to powder. These materials break down in the soil just like natural polymers, leaving nothing behind. And we can get degradation in warm water baths. And this is really important because this is very simple infrastructure that's easy to scale, enabling us to think about decentralizing the waste stream. And if we did this in an industrial context, we could actually recapture the degraded monomers and repolymerize them for a circular economy approach. And through some clever engineering that we've been able to do, we actually get degradation from one end of the polymer chain to the other, which eliminates the microplastics at the source, which is really important and a very unique piece of our system. We're formulating as a drop-in additive. It's readily scalable. Enzymes are efficient, so there's a low usage level, and the degradation is on demand. We're targeting PLA as our first market. This is the most common compostable plastic and one of the fastest growing segments within the industry. And we've chosen this because we have a few unique value propositions that we bring. We get to expand the design space for these plastics to include a wider variety of products. We help get past some of the regulatory hurdles, and we open up more favorable conditions at the end of life. And we're an awesome team to do this. I'm commercializing this work out of my PhD at UC Berkeley, where I spent 5 years developing this core technology. And I've brought on Jolene Matson, who led Ripple's first scale-up, to support us in scaling up these materials. I've also been able to attract support from the Department of Energy, Activate, one of the best accelerators in the country for deep tech, as well as fantastic advisors and investors in our seed round earlier this year. So connect with us. We're going to be launching our first pilots next year as we scale up to the kilogram scale, and we'd love to collaborate with brands and partners that are looking to implement more sustainable options, and we're growing our team. At Entropic Materials, we're using enzymes to change the way that we make and break down materials. Join the movement. Thank you.
Aileen, can we start with you?
Sure. Well done. The storytelling was really great. Well done.
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about the scale? You said scaling to kilogram scale. So what has to happen? Like, what does the plant look like? What does it entail? Do you do? And you said you insert into existing plastics. So do you have to build it like where people are making plastic bottles right now? Talk a little bit about the process.
Yeah, happy to do that. So you can really think about each plastic that we break down as like a three-part system. So there's the plastic itself, which is a bulk material. That's going to be 99+% of what it actually is. Then there's our stabilizers and the enzyme. Those two come together as an additive that will get added in at the very beginning of the manufacturing process. So they'll take plastic pellets, we'll add in a little bit of powder. This is called a master batch in the industry. And then that will get converted into a bag, a cup, a cell phone case, whatever product of interest there. In terms of the scale up, we're scaling up our proprietary stabilization technology. That's through a chemical synthesis approach. And so what's really nice about it is I've been able to actually attract and gather a couple of great industry veterans who've been at some of the big chemical companies in polymers who are providing some insight and guidance on what we exactly need to hit in order to be compatible with the existing manufacturing streams.
So do we know what the process is going to be, or like have we made the enzyme? Like where is it in terms of the manufacturing process already?
Yeah, so we've worked with commercially available enzymes, which is great because that brings the cost down dramatically. We, over time, can look at custom enzymes as well and do enzyme engineering for specific use cases, but obviously off the shelf is going to be cheaper. Our materials are proprietary, and then the polymers themselves are made at commodity scales. So we have a process, and we publish this in Nature, a preliminary process, and we've refined that over time in order to streamline it so we can easily integrate in.
You can go with David and then Mark.
Can you talk about the company? First off, like amazing vision. Hope it works at scale and saves the world. So that's awesome. It's true. Who doesn't? Yeah. But we talk about company vision. B2B ingredient company. Is that what you are? Do you want to be full stack in some sense? As you think about who do you sell to? Is it the sort of visible consumer product companies? You mentioned Coke. Last time on stage, or is it the industrial world that actually can make a bigger impact? Just sort of play this out. Yep. What do you want to build?
Yeah, absolutely happy to talk about that. So we're an enzyme stabilization company at our core. And enzymes do an incredible diversity of chemistry, not just degrading plastics. They can make pharmaceuticals, they can make specialty molecules. They're the workhorses of biology. Like when we eat all those foods I was showing, we got enzymes breaking all that stuff down, and enzymes were making it in the first place. So there's a lot of opportunity space for us to think about from the platform level. In terms of the plastics where we're first targeting, we've done a lot of customer discovery work at the front end, really mapping out the ecosystem. So despite having a PhD in polymer science, they don't teach you how the industry works. So I had to get out of the lab and actually go talk to people. And so I talked to people kind of all across the chain. And I have a much better understanding of how that structure works. And so I'm going to give you kind of a couple of options that we're exploring. We haven't nailed down into one specific, but we have conversations going in each segment. So we can actually work with the front-end resin manufacturers, which is great because that's a push into the system. For them, that's a cost increase. So of course, they're only going to want to adopt when they have to, which there's other angles we can play on that. But we open up, so with PLA at least, we actually open up the design space. So we give PLA plastics more opportunities to make compostable products because we speed up the degradation. And everyone needs to label that it's compostable if they're going to adopt. No one's going to make the change if they can't get the brand value and the communication, right? So we're going to open up that and really open up the design space for wider product. We can also go directly downstream, right, to the brands, which is the consumer-facing site. They're the ones making the public commitments. And we've had some great conversations in that space with both some tech companies as well as for products, right, packaging and things like that, as well as from the food side, where just a lot of the material is being made. And then we have some ideas about how we go further from there. And then this final option that I share, which we're not committed on this yet, but it's something that's always fun as someone that was creative is that the center of that manufacturing chain is a lot of contract manufacturing. And so we could just bring a product through them to the market, direct to the consumers, right? And really build up brand.
And that's a full stack vision, right?
Exactly. And I think for me, something that's going to be important with the company is actually building the brand and the brand recognition. So it's really nice to be up here because we want to be like a Gore-Tex for degradation, right? Or an Intel Inside, right? We want to be able to capture some of that and offer that to companies. You know, a lot of big companies struggle with consumers trusting them. There's a lot of skepticism. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Aaron, I have a question about the technology.
Yes.
What triggers the enzyme? I think you mentioned water, but you know, if it's triggered by water or heat, you use it for food, and if not, what type of plastic products you use it?
Totally. Yeah. So it's water and heat together. Okay. It's not one or the other.
So not coffee.
What? And so it's not also not humidity, right? It's not just humidity. You really need either submersion into water or a compost, like a wet compost type environment, to get degradation. We can also do engineering to put other triggers into the system if need be. But we're trying to move quickly on what is the first validated performance from there. And then there's some tuning in terms of the temperature that we can do. So we're looking at typically like 40 to 60 Celsius, but we can do some tuning and tailoring on that as well.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and then in terms of products, we wouldn't do, like, we're not looking at water bottles, for instance.
Yeah.
But also water bottles are one of the few successes in recycling, so I think it'd be kind of...
So kind of my follow-up question is, what sort of products are you guys looking at? Do you go first to the brands and retailers? And if so, who? Or do you go to the plastic manufacturers? Like,
Yep. Yeah, so in a lot of these conversations we've had, people want prototypes in their hands, right? That's really like what both of the brand side as well as the resin side, or, you know, that direction, right? They both want that. And so that's why we're scaling up to the kilo scale first. As an additive, that's going to lead to 100 kilos. And we bought some injection molding equipment, and we've made some films. And so we'll be able to actually start making, you know, wrap and products and actually putting them in hands. And we're going to be really driven by customer engagement because we're building products, right?
Just one quick question. I mean, this is maybe, I know you're injecting the enzymes and building the, manufacturing the plastic that way. Could you kind of spray the plastic in the recycling center afterwards? And I don't know, then you don't care about heat and what?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are approaches, and people are looking at doing enzymes in, like, say, a big tank and put plastic in there. I think the hard part is that enzymes tend to be fragile. So putting them in this environment that, you know, post-consumer plastics, it's like a whole mixed bag. It's waste. You got oil stuff in there. You got
we can talk off stage.
Yeah, happy to share more. Yes, in theory, but there's a lot to it.
To that question, and we're an investor in a different company taking a similar approach to what you alluded to, but is this a race in terms of cost? And you said it before, right? You have to be cheap enough that the sort of company goes for it because they're going to make that sort of brand calculation.
Yes.
And if it's not government mandated that plastic manufacturers are thinking about the world differently, they're going to go for the lowest cost option.
Can I build on that too? Is like, what is the moat? Like, there's a lot of people who will be going after this. Like, what is the differentiation for you versus other people who are going to try the same thing?
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of the other players I see in the space are really enzyme engineering platforms. They're looking at trying to use AI to basically design enzymes to do things, right? And they're going to be limited in a lot of ways to the environments that enzymes are just inherently stable within. And those are mostly downstream plays, meaning they're going to have to still face the same challenges that the current recycling stream faces, which is going to collect, sort, clean, and then process into the package. Where we can really differentiate is that we can actually go in at the beginning. We can think about going in at the end as well. That's not off the table. But by being able to go in at the beginning, it includes the tools right at the start, right? So it's like IKEA, you get your furniture, it comes with the tool to build it. You don't have to go find one after you get it home. And that is part of it. And then in terms of moats, so there's some IP that we have around this. We're also building out further IP catalog. And then just from my time in my PhD, developed a lot of internal understanding and knowledge about how these systems behave and really bringing the energy landscape kind of in alignment to be able to engineer toward these things. So we're trying to move fast. We're also working on IP, and then there's some trade secret stuff.
I think most of it was covered. What differentiates you from any other encapsulation company specifically? Because there are a lot of enzyme engineering companies, as you mentioned. Well, not a lot, but there are a few. Yep. What about other encapsulation companies? What's your moat specifically? The other enzyme luggage people.
Yeah. Are we?
No, it's fine.
Great. Okay.
Just keep it short.
Absolutely. Yeah, so there's a lot of enzyme immobilization. This is not the first time anyone's tried some of this work. What we've shown in our previous publications is that we have some best-in-class performance, and it's a platform across a wide variety. So I like to use a kind of clothing analogy. It's small to extra large, and that covers a large swath of the enzyme space that we can do without actually tailoring each individual design. And we can tailor if need be, right? Because sometimes it needs to be perfect.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
Okay, from Greensboro, North Carolina, we have Minerva Lithium. Presenting from Minerva Lithium, we have Shiba Dawood, co-founder and CEO, and Hermali Rathnaki, co-founder and CTO. Welcome them to the stage.
Today, the whole world is transitioning to clean energy, due to which the energy storage market is expected to increase in billions in coming years. Minerals are fundamental for clean energy transition. And earlier this year, in February, President Biden announced to bolster critical mineral supply chain for minerals such as lithium, which is expected to increase more than 4,000% in coming decade. Lithium is a primary component in battery, and battery market is expected to reach $183 billion by 2025, and this requires 1 million metric ton of lithium. There are various resources of lithium in the form of hard rock and brine. Mining lithium from hard rock is pretty much what you think it could be, very similar to traditional ore mining. On the other hand, brine are the natural resources of lithium, which are present in the form of salt lake, oceans, and continental brine, constituting 66% of total global lithium resources. So, solar evaporation is a current technique that is used to extract lithium from brine, in which water is pumped into large ponds, about 20,000 acres, and allowed to be evaporated for 36 months. And to just produce 1 metric ton of lithium, they use up 500,000 gallons of water, releasing 5,000 kilograms of carbon with a production cost of $6,000. What we see here, that we do have enough resources of lithium in brine, but lithium brine industry lack efficient direct lithium extraction technology to currently address exploding battery market. So addressing these challenges, Minerva Lithium have developed direct lithium extraction technology using nanotechnology. Our company was spinned off from my PhD project. During my PhD, I was able to develop nanomosaic absorbents, which are very similar to sponge. These sponge-like materials are chemically and physically designed to just attract lithium and reject all other minerals. So taking advantage of this selectivity, our process is two-step, which can extract lithium within 48 hours, processing it to battery-grade lithium. And to just produce 1 metric ton of lithium, we use 30,000 gallons of water with no carbon emission and production cost of $1,000. Let me show you the process. These are video. These are our nanomosaic absorbents, which are made at room temperature. And these are our filter units with filter that comes along with filter bag. In first step, we add nanomosaic absorbents. And in the second step, we add brine with lithium and other minerals. We allow it to soak for 24 hours, and later collect it to do ICP analysis, which helps to determine amount of lithium absorbed in the absorbents. ICP instrumentation helps to identify and measure the elements. So from our results, we have found out as the time increases from 0 to 24 hours, the efficiency increases from 40 to 95%. And later, we desorb and convert into battery-grade lithium. Let me show you our material physically. And let me show you our filter units that come along with filter bags and which can treat 171 gallons of water per minute. That is, it extracts almost 2 metric ton of lithium that is generating $42 million revenue per year. Our current customers are brine operators from lithium and petrochemical companies, and we are targeting to capture 1% of lithium market, which is expected to reach $13.5 billion by 2025. So comparing to traditional technologies and directly developed lithium extraction technologies, our technologies offer competitive advantage in terms of cost and efficiency. We are a team of scientists and engineers with former CTO of Halliburton serving as business advisor and former CEO of automotive industry serving as chief operating officer. I am Shiba Dawood, CEO and co-founder with a PhD in nanoscience. Hemali Ratnaika is a co-founder and associate professor in nanoscience. Minerva Lithium, with its disruptive technology and outstanding team, aims to provide sustainable energy technology to rapidly growing energy storage market. And this technology is not just limited to lithium extraction, but can be extended to other critical mineral extraction like cobalt, nickel, with the water purification as byproduct. We are currently fundraising to move forward for the pilot demonstration. So if you are someone from clean tech space looking for investing, collaborating, please sign up for Minerva Lithium and join me in this journey to make United States a global leader in clean energy transition. Thank you.
You got a lot of smiles from these judges while you're pitching throughout the entire thing. Let's start with Rich.
First of all, congratulations on the progress. It's really critical national security need, obviously, in addition to the commercial innovation. To your 2x2 diagram that looked at the cost profile, so at scale, how will the cost profile of a kilogram or whatever volume or weight of lithium, how will it compare to the solar evaporation approach, please?
So solar evaporation and also comparing to our technique. So for solar evaporation, just to produce 1 metric ton of lithium, they spend $6,000, and our cost is about $1,000 to extract 1 metric ton of lithium.
Is there any downside? I mean, it seems like a dramatic improvement. Like, is there a logic? Is there a trade-off that's worth understanding?
Definitely. So we are eliminating the operational cost, and we are also eliminating a lot of chemical hazards and footprint and electricity. So these are some of the things that go into solar evaporation. Ours is room temperature technique. We do not use any forms of energy like electricity, and we have tried to reduce the water usage really low. That is, they use 500,000 gallons of water. We use 30,000 gallons, which is just 6% of it. So we have reduced all of these things, and that sums up the whole price.
Thank you.
Just congratulations and
Thank you.
Amazing progress. Is your value prop less water, lower cost, more lithium? Like as you look at those, like what is the core value prop of the company?
Our value proposition, I will put it this way: we are 500 times faster than solar evaporation, and we process battery-grade lithium. And those are some of the features that you mentioned that come along with that.
Thank you.
Like that. Mar?
Yeah, I mean, I think following on Rich's and David's, it's too good to be true. So now the question is,
Yes.
How big is the market? So I think you said you had 13 billion for the lithium market. How big is the mining market for lithium? Like, if you're going to sell these membranes and so on, and what type of sale is it? Is it, I just don't know any of these lithium brining mines, I guess. Are they, is that a bunch of little people, big people? Like, maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah. So right now, the market is 5.3, but it is expected to grow to 13.5 by 2025.
That's the tooling for mining.
Yes. And these are present in 2 resources. And brine, why exactly we are mentioning this? Because they constitute 66% of total global lithium resources. And we do have lithium there. So instead of going for the other techniques which are more carbon, which release more carbon emission, we do have naturally available resource just there. We just require a technology that can get it. And the current technique that is being used, like I said, like it sound, very ancient. You are using large ponds and really, highly and high operational and capital investment. So these are the direct lithium extraction technology that could actually bring a breakthrough here.
Sort of just quickly bringing the three of these questions. Why won't you be successful? What will cause your company to not be successful?
I would say that this company has various verticals. That's the reason we have said that we develop sustainable energy technologies. So, and this is not just extended to lithium, but other critical minerals, and like I mentioned, and also water purification. So this is a byproduct. You put a sponge, and when you remove the sponge, you also get water purified. So that could be one of the other vertical that we can extend. So
just to clarify, you extract lithium from brine,
yes,
and produce battery-grade lithium and drinkable water?
Yes.
Yeah.
I got to jump in.
Is that?
Yeah.
Just checking.
Also, yeah.
You go first.
How novel is that among your competitors? Does anybody else do that?
It's yeah, I can answer for that. It's our technology is the sorbent-based technology. There are much of the competitive technologies like nanomembrane, ion exchange. Ion exchange is the most competitive right now in the market and extracting lithium from brine. But there is a limitation in the ion exchange. Because the brine needs to be lithium-rich, concentration higher 1,000 ppm parts per million. So our technology go all the way to the lower concentration, even the 50 ppm lithium concentration. That's where the uniqueness comes with our technology, because these sponges are nanomaterials. They are specifically tailored into get the lithium from the lower concentration. So one of the other advantage in our technology with compared to the ion exchange for lilac. And what they are doing is their ion exchange method is only for working for when you have more higher salt, TDS, it doesn't work. So they have to remove some TDS. And that's where our technology comes in the two-column system. In the first column, we remove we have a very higher concentration of TDS, like sodium chloride and all the dissolved solid. And you can remove those in the first column. And then with the impurities, the magnesium. Magnesium is the next one is coming with lithium pairing. So removing magnesium is really difficult. But in our materials, we will not going to have a magnesium in our material. That's why we can produce the high purity. These are research-based work, and we publish, and then these are fundamentally done in the lab work.
Jim?
I mean, is one of the downsides actually, Richard mentioned the matter of national security, that this is so important that you're very limited in who can use this? And I noticed the Halliburton guy on your executive team. So is that, a limitation here?
We don't see as a limitation, but actually because of his experience, and also right now companies like Halliburton and Schlumberger are also exploring these other avenues of lithium extraction, and he coming with so much of expertise and industrial experience more of, we find him much more suitable to the team.
So I'm going to copy one of David's earlier questions, which is when you think about 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what kind of a company do you have? Are you going to keep selling the technology to people who have brine farms? Are you going to actually just lease land or buy your own brine and sell lithium? What's the plan? Because it kind of sounds like a money machine.
It's actually, so we're looking for within 10 years is a big picture for the company. And it is not only that this technology is strictly restricted to the lithium. So we are also, this technology can apply for the critical minerals, other minerals, cobalt and lithium. And the big picture moving forward, and also we are giving the fresh water back. So we don't throw with the chemicals water into that. That is another avenue segment that we can go into. And also that other lithium producers and for mining. And so we are right now exploring and whether we can put our technology into the mining. So because this technology working in anything in that solution in the lithium, we can grab it. So we are working with actually right now we are in the discussion with Alabama, and then they do have in a Kings Mountain in North Carolina. And if you see the news that recently this morning, and they got $140 million from the DOE to mining for the Kings Mountain. And Kings Mountain has about 4,000 metric tons of lithiums, and you can provide within a year. So that's we are also focusing on into that and with them, and we can expand that.
And,
so
how difficult it is for you to reconfigure the system for other minerals? Just on a
It is right now. It is already the lab scale work is done for cobalt and the nickel.
Okay.
And so that's why we are very promising we can go into the more of the critical minerals extractions. And also we're looking at the earth rare oxide metals.
Can I just understand, just from a technical perspective, is one of the materials pulling out the liquid as an absorbent, and then you're filtering, or through a specific, or
no? So it's you have the brine, right, with all the other impurities, other dissolved salt and the lithium. So what this sorbent do is sorbent absorbs selectively lithium into the sorbent, and then we desorb in the room temperature with the acidified water and take the brine lithium-rich water out, and then we do the further processes to get to the lithium carbonate, battery-grade lithium carbonate.
Okay, got it. So you're extracting it in a liquid form, and then
exactly. So now when we do our customer discoveries, and so we found out some of the customers are really interested on getting the lithium-rich brine and without converting to lithium carbonate. So there also we do have actually right now the couple of customers that they wanted to have a lithium-rich as a lithium chloride or the lithium acetate, and then they can use that to produce the lithium metal. That is the another avenue. There's a big market we have in there with Tesla. Tesla batteries, they use in the lithium thin film metal. So this is one of the avenue, huge market that we can explore further.
You explained that so well. Thank you very much.
you.
Give them a round of applause.
Good job. I love like two female technical.
I feel like I know a lot about lithium now, and I knew nothing before.
Brine operators.
Okay, and for the last company presenting a startup battlefield that disrupt 2022 from Waterloo, Ontario, Swap Robotics. Presenting for Swap Robotics is Tim Lichty. Come on out, Tim.
Hello, everybody. My name is Tim Lichty. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Swap Robotics. And our mission is to make outdoor work equipment 100% electric. The outdoor world needs to be maintained, but there are two main problems today. Firstly, traditional equipment is gasoline or diesel powered, and there's a long-term labor shortage. To help solve this problem, we first developed 100% electric robots for sidewalk snow plowing, and it went well. In our second year of operation, we had 12 robots in paid commercial operation in Canada. We charged several $1,000s per robot per month. We were going, just through one, thanks. We were going to do, with the same robots, we were going to do sports field cutting, but we kept on hearing that these massive 1,000-acre solar farms were a huge headache to maintain. When we looked deeper into the problem, we discovered a few things. Today, solar energy is the cheapest form of new energy generation. And by 2040, it's expected that the #1 power source in the world will be solar. And after a solar power plant is built, the biggest expense is actually cutting the vegetation and the grass on site. When we looked at the technical perspective, we discovered a few unique challenges to cutting solar sites. Firstly, drivelines limit typical equipment, and that equipment needs to go underneath the panels and around the I-beams. And a special cutting deck is needed to cut the especially long and thick grass and vegetation on solar sites. A regular cutting deck won't do it. And this is so much fun to show. Our solution was robotic vegetation management for solar farms. But long term, it is so much more. We've developed a powerful modular platform for not just grass cutting and snow plowing, but dozens of different operations, and you can keep it there. Our in-house hydraulics platform drives the grass cutting deck and the snow plow attachment today, and long term, it can do dozens of different use cases. Our quick attach system makes switching attachments quick and easy. The tops can be swapped, enabling dozens of different use cases long term. And batteries can be swapped in 5 minutes, enabling near 24/7 operation. This alone can triple monetization. The robot can hold over 1,000 pounds of load, enabling use cases that require extremely heavy loads. And getting back to solar, we've developed the world's first 100% electric rough cut deck that is especially made to cut down that thick vegetation that grows on solar sites that can be as thick as 2 inches in diameter. And Tony's going to show the difference between a rough cut blade and a finish cut blade. You can see the rough cut blade is 10 times the mass. Thanks, Tony. We also developed the world's first 100% electric grass cutting deck that is able to offset, and it can offset up to 6 feet to get underneath those panels and around those I-beams. The solar world had never seen anything like this. We launched Solar Cuts in mid-2022. There was so much pent-up demand that within 60 days of launch, we had over $9 million of signed agreements. Not LOIs, signed agreements. So let's take a look at this robot. Cut to demo, please. The robot has 6 emergency stop buttons, 360-degree cameras and sensors, 2-way audio, night lights, and even heated windshield wipers for operation in snow. And thanks, Tony, or thanks, Spencer. Cut to presentation, please. By the way, we only have one competitor in the market. We've gone up against them 3 times since launch, and we've won every time. Our solution is more robust. So I'm the CEO. I've grown 4 companies, each from $0 to at least 6 figures of revenue. We have 4 co-founders with industry experience in autonomy, mechanical, electrical, and software engineering. And we're the perfect team for a market with exponential growth. And in fact, the solar vegetation cuts market globally by 2024 alone is expected to be $50 billion. When considering that this is just our launching use case and that there are dozens of different use cases, the total addressable market on a 20-year perspective is over $1 trillion. So we're attracting some major attention. And we're pleased to announce today that Solve Energy, the largest utility-scale solar constructor in USA, invested in us as of last Friday. And we also have investment from the largest solar vegetation cutter in Texas. And just in the last 24 hours, we've received 2 offers of further investment, each for 7 figures. So we started in snow, we graduated to solar, and we're building an outdoor work robotics platform. Join us in making outdoor work equipment sustainable. We're Swap Robotics. Thank you.
I need a mic for that. Jim, can we start with you?
Sure. Congrats, guys. Awesome. And you said you started 4 companies before. What did they do? And was one of them Roomba?
No, but we're talking with iRobot tomorrow. The first one was actually grass cutting when I was in university. Grew that to a few cities and a few hundred customers. And then from there did software companies.
So, and what is this replacing? Like, what do farmers do now? I mean, if this is such a huge problem, and then how would you scale this to integrate? with the existing, infrastructure?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that it's currently done now, the vast majority of it is done by humans on riding mowers and bobcats, and you can imagine it is not a fun job. In Texas, we saw that it was at 121 Fahrenheit. It's sun up to sundown. It's in rural areas. It's extremely hard to find people. The turnover is multiple times per year. It's just not a great job. So this can really get rid of that problem. Another challenge that a lot of these solar asset owners have, the 50 largest solar asset owners do a little over half of all acres in USA. And so typically they have dozens, sometimes even hundreds of sites, and it's a real pain because there aren't national companies that they can go to. So they have to be finding local people, making sure they have their permissions to get on site because it's fenced in, which is great for us. So there's a lot of challenges with that. This is something that makes their lives a lot easier.
Mar?
Yeah, I have a question. How do you sell these robots? I think you mentioned it's a service. So you go in and I assume you learn the terrain and train the robot. And how often do you have to do it?
Yeah.
Use the robot for another acre? How many robots per farm, basically?
For sure, so it is robotics as a service, and customers love that. They're used to paying a per acre price anyways, and so it's very easy to make an apples to apples comparison. They don't have to do any math. It's just we aim to save companies 15 to 20% from day one. They don't need to learn robotics. We take care of everything for it. In terms of the acreage that it can be cut per day, currently we're getting about 2 acres in an 8-hour day. We're really excited about that partnership with the largest solar builder in USA because they manage over 100 sites as well. And so when we can have the robots there operating 24/7, that's instantly tripling our acreage. And then long term, so if you run the numbers, depending on if there's downtime, that's about $12,000 to $15,000 per robot per month. We're running them extremely slowly right now. We expect to be within 1 to 3 years at more like $30,000 in revenue per robot per month. So the payback period is under 2 months.
Did you say 2 acres in an 8-hour day?
In an 8-hour day. So 6 acres per 24-hour period, you're getting into several hundred acres per month. And typically it varies from region to region, but typically about $100 an acre, but that's climbing quickly because 2 of the biggest expenses, labor, gasoline, they're going up.
And you said there were 1,000-acre farms?
So
or is that, I think they're smaller, but I don't know.
Most of them are actually larger.
Is it?
Yeah, and especially the new ones, they keep on getting larger and larger.
So you need a lot of robots.
You need a ton, a ton of robots. It's almost like the San Francisco Bridge. They can be there the entire time. When they finish at one point, they just go back.
Okay, I have one more question. How many acres total solar farms?
There's over 1 million acres in solar farms today. When you back into those numbers, the market right now is a little over $1 billion, but we're only 1-2% of the way on the S-curve for solar adoption. We just passed the first terawatt hour as humanity in the last few months. The second that took a few decades. Second terawatt hour is expected to take 3 years. We should be at 50 plus terawatt hours by 2040.
Okay. You alluded to having only one competitor.
Yes.
Is that in the automated solar farm mowing, for lack of a better word?
Yeah.
That's in that bucket.
Specifically in that bucket, and that's all their robots can do.
Okay.
Yes.
You also alluded to all the different modules that you guys are planning to build or are building. We just talk about those.
Yeah. So to be sure, we want to be laser focused on getting to 100 million in ARR.
For how long?
Until we get to 100 million in ARR. And
how long?
How long?
How long is that going to take?
I'm hoping 2 years.
Okay. So 3 years from now, what are the other modules?
That would be good.
Yeah. At that point, most of our focus will still be on then getting to $1 billion in ARR because the market will double.
5 years. What are the other modules?
Yeah, absolutely. So snow, over $20 billion market in USA and Canada alone. One of the things that this largest solar constructor wants to work with us on is actually the construction sites for solar themselves. Thousands of acres. It's going to cost hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars to build these things. It's the definition of something that's repeatable, that it's in a controlled environment, that's massive scale, and that no one's around. That's just one example. Street sweeping, tree planting, all sorts. You take a look outside, anything that work equipment is doing, it should be made electric. And if we're going to make it electric, it probably can have the option for autonomous.
And taking your technology and what you're building from a controlled environment to a non-controlled environment, street sweeping. Will you just talk about that transition and what needs to happen between Absolutely. Now and then.
And that's the 5-year. There's billions of revenue we can do in controlled environments. So we want to be really shy around humans. I'd be happy to chat with you off stage about our strategy and some of these other verticals where there's a group that we're working with where we can do 1,000+ robots just with them for snow, but they're in areas where no one's allowed in. So.
When you talk about snow, are you talking about underneath the panels or talking about cleaning the panels?
Totally different use case.
Yeah.
Sorry. If they're in areas in the north, they still have miles of roads and other areas to do. So that is available as well. But we're also talking about sidewalk snow plowing or just snow plowing in areas like small
Okay, so you're not talking about, someone still has to go clean the panels in these farms.
So someone still cleans the panels. That is actually one more use case we could do where we could have, you actually need to clean the panels well in North America at least. You need to have water because of the type of soiling that happens on them. It's not, we hear that a lot, it's less attractive than it seems just because the rain naturally takes care of it and the losses are less and less. Okay. But it is one more use case we could do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any chance that for future solar farms, they'll just figure out how to put a substrate on the bottom so grass will not be a problem?
So everyone tries to do this. There's little pilots that happen, but think about in Florida, for example, the hurricane we had a few weeks ago. What happens when you have thousands of acres and hundreds of millions of dollars of assets that are on the ground that have electricity and that now don't have any substance and soil erosion because you've gotten rid of all the vegetation. One of the big reasons why they have to keep the vegetation is actually keep everything firm and together so it's not going to
and the root system prevents additional soiling from dust and wind, or from wind and pickup.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Sorry, the root system of the vegetation specifically is what they need. They don't need the leafy greens,
yes,
but they need the roots.
Yes, yeah, for additional soiling, yeah. And also so they don't erode and fall away, yeah.
Is the design of it being electric, is that, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why that could be preferred. Is that a cost trade-off? Like, would it have been cheaper if it was gasoline, or it's actually a cost savings? And
yeah, so I'm embarrassed to say at the start, I thought that it would have made more sense to go gasoline because it requires a lot of energy. I'm so glad that our engineers were saying, we can do this electric because it's a lot of work to change that. And it's actually great cost savings. And the reason is because this is pretty energy intensive, and so you might be paying $50, $75 in gasoline per 8-hour time period. You're paying a fraction of that for the solar energy. So that's one part. But another thing is, some of our first investors for solar was the largest solar vegetation company in Texas. They have very hot weather, they have dusty conditions, and they were saying they were going to have to buy $1 million+ in new ICE gas and diesel equipment. It breaks down, the belts are brutal. You have a lot fewer moving parts by going electric, and it can handle the hot weather better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Give them a round of applause.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Go, guys.
I want to explain what's going to happen now. These judges are going to go in the back, and they're going to talk about all the companies. And then, like I discussed earlier, they're going to look at the company's potential for impact, either financially or socially.